And it was funny because all these guys would be like, come on, we can do it. If we work together, we can achieve it. And so you'd clean your dormitory, you'd have a set of tasks and you'd complete these tasks. And I remember almost feeling like smug, like there's no way they can get us on this, right? And you would have an MTI come in there and he'd be looking around and he'd pull out a chair and he'd stand up on the chair and he'd swipe his finger along the top of a light fixture. And he's like, what's this dust? And you're like, oh, that's on me. I didn't think to check the backside of the sheets in the ceiling.
Welcome to Shaping the Basin. I am here with Hawthorne. You're the recruiter
Yes, ma'am.
out there. But I just learned some fun things about you. You also sing. You had a radio show.
Mhm.
Let's see. I think you do some bodybuilding.
Do some bodybuilding. I
Yeah, we're
dabble.
gonna talk about all kinds of things today. Let's talk first about recruiting. How long have you been in the Air Force? Are you Air National Guard? You're Air Force, right?
Air National Guard.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I enlisted when I was 19. That was in 2013. So I enlisted in June of 2013 and didn't actually go to basic training until December 30th of 2013. And so that was the worst New Year's I've ever had in my life. There's nothing like heralding in the new year while some man screams in your face about how dumb you are. Actually, the exact verbiage was, I looked like a bag of smashed butthole. I don't know if you can air that, but I don't even know what that means, but it really hurt my feelings.
That's a terrible.
Yeah, it was wild.
That's a terrible compliment. I'm going to use it sometime.
Yeah, I was gonna say, watch somebody. It really gets the wheels turned into somebody's head.
Dang. So you left like right after Christmas time.
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
got in there.
yeah.
What was BMT like?
Um, I liken it to it was the worst summer camp that you've ever been to. Uh, you show up. Okay, it's like a social experiment. You have all these people from such various walks of life. There's a common denominator. At least this is what I found. This is anecdotal, but there's a common denominator that brings somebody into the military. Some people, it truly is patriotism. Their father served, their grandfather served. They love their country. For the most part, something in somebody's life was not working out before they joined, whether it was financially, s- socially. Some of these people, like, you'd really meet them and they had nothing but the shirt on their back. Like, this was the difference between them being homeless or them having like a fruitful future. When you get to basic training, everybody shows up in the airport and you sit in this room. And they're kind of like, they're checking names, they're making sure you're there. They split you into these lines. And you sit in these lines on the floor. And you're kind of just getting to know everybody. Where are you from? What's your name? And then they put you on a bus. And I remember we got on the bus, it was pretty late, and we're chatting. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'll never forget the song The Pinball Wizard by The Who was playing on the bus speakers. And we're talking, we go through the gates, and the gate at Lackland, don't quote me on this, but it says something to the effect of, the gateway of the Air Force. And I remember we go through the main gate into Lackland, and the bus driver just, everybody shut up. Everybody shut up. They're like, this is not fun. Like, this is the first day of the rest of your life. And it was just silent. I remember you roll in to your training facilities, and then these big buildings, almost on stilts. And all of the MTIs, the military training instructors, are standing there in a straight line. And they all have these campaign hats, and they're pulled down really low over their eyes. So you can just see like their mouth and their jaws. And it was very, very sobering. I remember it being the first real experience of my childhood, young adulthood. But the bus stops, the doors open, and they're just like immediately on there. Get up, grab your stuff, get out. And you stand in these little boxes, and you have your luggage, and they say, put your luggage down. You set your luggage down, and if you set it down too hard, They say, pick it back up. That wasn't good enough. And they'll make you pick it up, set it down, pick it up, set it down, pick it up, set it down. And they're like, you have 10 seconds to get upstairs into your dormitory. And it's impossible, right?
Right.
So basic training was kind of this series of impossible tasks. Like at least the first few weeks, it was designed for you to fail. And it was funny because all these guys would be like, come on, we can do it. If we work together, we can achieve it. And so you'd clean your dormitory, you'd have a set of tasks, and you complete these tasks. And I remember almost feeling like smug, like there's no way they can get us on this, right? And you would have an MTI come in there and he'd be looking around and he'd pull out a chair and he'd stand up on the chair and he'd swipe his finger along the top of a light fixture. And he's like, what's this dust? And you're like, oh, that's on me. I didn't think to check the backside of the sheets in the ceiling. And so it was a perfect system where you force imperfect people to fail. And it was just over. It was constant. There was a rule for everything: how you tied your shoes, how you rolled your socks, how you folded your shirts, how you made your bed. And if you deviated from that at all, like there were consequences. And so you would get instructed. You would only get instruction once. So they'd say, this is how you roll your socks. If you weren't paying attention, you really had to rely on the people around you to kind of fill those gaps. And so we culminated this system where you would have somebody who was really good at folding socks. You'd be like, all right, that's our sock dude. Like, Smith, you're the sock guy. I'm really good at folding shirts. Like, I love that. And so then everybody would bring you your shirts. We had a laundry crew and they would just do the laundry. We would just have somebody who would clean the bathroom. And so it very quickly turned into this very like copacetic ecosystem where everybody had a designed job. The people who were weak at this, you were supported by the people who were good at it, and the people who were good at this were weak in something else. And so by the time that you're graduating, like it all made sense. Everything made sense. Everything had a place. You knew who to rely on. You knew who not to rely on. It was a positive experience.
Yeah. What was it like graduating from it? Like, did your parents come?
Mm-mm.
No?
No. It was just like the phase of life that I was in. Like I really kind of forged this path for myself. I didn't have people who were unsupportive. Like my grandpa was in, my mom was in. My grandpa had passed away, and everybody just kind of keeps living their life. And so I decided to do this, and I went away, and I don't know why I expected like people to kind of fall apart without my presence. But no, people just keep living their lives. And that was a really hard lesson for me. And so when it came to graduation, it was just the way things fell. And I was one of the only people who didn't have somebody who came. But I remember I had a really hard time in basic training. I just really had no structure leading up to that point. And so this environment was the first time that I had like legitimate expectations and then consequences for not meeting those expectations. And so I really, really struggled. When I graduated, I had a MTI named Staff Sergeant Woods and Staff Sergeant Richardson. And Staff Sergeant Woods, he was just on me all the time. Like, he would tell me, you do not deserve to be here. Like, I've seen what this has done for my life. I've seen what this has done for other people's life. And you do not understand the weight that this commitment entails. And I was like, what does this guy know? And I remember the day that we graduated, you do an airman's run. And I know that you've seen this. You do the airman's run, and that's like, so it's exhilarating, right? You run, it's a 5K, you run 3 miles, you sing the entire time. Everybody runs in step, and it was, you just feel like you could run forever. And you get done with the airman's run and you run through and you see everybody's family. It's the first time you've seen civilians in 2 months. And you run through and everybody's cheering. And then you get ready for your parade. You put on your dress blues and you march in the parade, and it's very ceremonious. Mm-hmm. We were band flight. So we marched at the back and we actually played our instruments while we during the parade.
Wow.
And so that was like an additional stressor to our series of basic military training, is that we also had to learn how to like play this music. And so we had a band practice on top of like all of the marching and the vaccinations and the training and the running and the shooting. Um, and so when we finished our ceremony, you go to the parade field and you stand at attention while you're awarded your airman's coin. And it denotes the transition, like the official transition from being a civilian to a trainee to an airman. And I'll never forget Staff Sergeant Woods shaking my hand with my airman's coin, and telling me like, I think you could do it, man. Um, and told me like, I'm proud that you did. I shook my hand, and then I had a really good group of friends in BMT, and they're the ones who came and tapped me out after their family tapped them out. And so they came in and brought me out of attention. And it was extremely special.
Yeah, that's awesome. And now here you are, 13 years later,
Mhm.
and you're helping other people have that same experience as a recruiter, right? You're recruiting them and they're headed off to BMT.
Yes, ma'am.
What advice do you give them? Or how do you prepare them? Or you just like go in there blind?
No, I'm very much so. Like I've had so many people throughout these 13 years who have genuinely led out of responsibility and ethics, and basically like really kind of greased my path to not make the same mistakes that they did. And I still made mistakes. And so I always try to extend that to these kids that I work with. Because some of them, I mean, it truly is just like the example I gave at the beginning. Um, some of these people, they do it for, I shouldn't say it like that. Um, some self-service, right? It's a means to complete college, or it's insurance for their family. But some of these people, like this is transformative, just like it was for me. It's transformative for them. And so I always try to extend, to meet them where they're at with a sense of responsibility, just like the people did for me. And I think my biggest piece of advice that I would drive into every single person, doesn't matter why they're doing this, is like, don't take this for granted. If there opportunities will be presented to you, um, that are directly proportionate to the amount of effort that you put into this opportunity. And so I tell everybody, like, volunteer for everything. If somebody's pitching you something, do it. Because if you fail, you're going to learn something. But if you succeed, you're also going to learn something. Like, you're going to reap the benefits of this. Um, and so attitude, that's like the biggest thing. You're going to be someplace crappy. You're going to be in BMT and it's going to suck. But the difference between somebody who gets something from someplace like basic military training and somebody who doesn't, it comes down to attitude. Are you thankful for this opportunity? Are you learning something? So I think that's my biggest piece of wisdom that I give all of these people who are transitioning into the military is, like, take it for what it is, and have a good attitude, because it makes all the difference.
Yeah, I love that. You chose Air National Guard.
Mhm.
Was there a reason you picked Air National Guard?
Yes. Um, this is so funny. Um, I I started going to a local school in Klamath Falls called Triad. It was Triad at the time. It's Crosspoint now. And when I transitioned from public school into private school, it was honestly, it was out of desperation. Like, I was not being successful in public school. Um, and it was a huge sacrifice for my mom financially to put me into the school. But when I transitioned to the school, one of the only people who would not like deal with my disruption, was this girl named Suzanne, and she was just mean. Like, she was mean. Um, and I guess I decided early on, I'm like, I'm gonna marry this girl. I really. And so long story short, like, I feel like I courted her throughout, from sixth grade to the time that we were seniors. I was finally like, please please go on a date with me. And that taught me something else. There's a thin line between determination and harassment. And I towed that line very, very carefully, and it worked out. And so she's my wife now. We've been married for 10 years. We've been together for like 14 years. But she was going to go to school. She's incredibly intelligent. And she got a really good scholarship to go to a school up in Portland called George Fox University. And so I knew that I wanted to make a life with her. And I was afraid that if I went active duty, I wasn't sure where it would take me. And I was afraid that if I did that, like I would not fit into her plans. And so that was probably the biggest motivator, was to stay local so that I could, build a life with my wife. There were just too many unknowns.
Yeah.
But that was probably my biggest motivator why I stayed.
And why you went into the Air National Guard.
Yes, ma'am.
That makes sense. I can imagine like the foundation of that BMT and then everything now has like that transformed you in lots of ways. How has the experience of BMT and your military experience transformed other parts of your life, not just your career?
It's a really good question, Heather. When I got done with basic training, I remember it was genuinely the hardest thing I had done up to that point. It was the most strenuous. It was the most expectations. And I remember graduating. I got, when you go through basic training, you take all of these tests. Like, that's a big part of basic training that I feel like people don't talk about. Like, when you see it in the movies, it's all rucking, and you're doing these confidence courses, and you're shooting, and you're in Air Force BMT. A big part of your basic military training is classroom time. And so you get this curriculum. You're learning Air Force history. You're learning the hierarchical order of the Air Force. And I really, really liked that. And you get these books, and you don't have anything else. And so the time that we were just honestly bored, I would just read this book like over and over and over and over. And I ended up getting like top tester for that entire series of basic training. And so out of like 600 people, I ended up getting like the highest score on this test, which was crazy. Yeah, I still remember Staff Sergeant Woods being like, Hawthorne was the top tester. I'm like, well, but I remember graduating, being like, shoot, if I can do this, like, I wonder what else I could do. I ended up enlisting I was a ground radar maintainer. And so we fixed all of the radio systems, radar systems, like airfield systems for an air traffic control mission. It was a really hard job. The tech school was long. It was in total, it was about 11 months long. It was very theory rich. And I just remember I like genuinely had to study. And I studied. I did not graduate top of my class for that. I did not. That was hard. But I remember being like, shoot, like, I can work harder than I thought I could. I'm smarter than I thought I was. And it gave me a ton of confidence once I got back to actually start kind of pouring myself into these endeavors that before the Air Force, I would have never even considered. Right. It made me realize that my biggest limiting factor was myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that was even with like this woman that I was pursuing. Because I think deep down I was like, she has too much to offer. I could never give her a life that I felt like she deserved. And once I got back, like it was a series of self-tests just to see how far I could push myself. And it really is just conglomerated over the course of almost 14 years. And really, like, I tell myself now, the only reason I won't achieve this is because I genuinely don't care about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been extremely transformative, the things I'm able to achieve for myself and for those around me.
It's easy to get lost. Don't know which path to take, what to post. In the social media jungle, video is king. Your kids are obsessed, your customers are addicted, we're all hooked, and social media sites prioritize videos. So when you're ready to stand out from the crowd, reach out to 40 Deuce Films. Feeling over everything.
I think that's a lesson for a lot of people. I think when you put yourself in hard situations and challenge yourself, it builds confidence,
Absolutely.
right? There's when you start to learn what you're capable of. Going back to the top tester, I think it's interesting. You mentioned you struggled in school.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't know if that was grades and stuff, but kind of interesting that you'd struggle in school, but then be the top tester. I feel like there's some kind of lesson there about school.
I think it was, I don't know how much time we have. Um, I barely graduated high school, like by the skin of my teeth. Um, and this was really like, I had a group of kids that I went to school with, and I remember they did like they called it a friend intervention, and they invited me over to like, hey buddy, we're all getting together, and I show up to this house, and it's all my friends and some of their parents, and they sat me down in this room. There were all these chairs, and then there was a chair in the middle, like horrible. I still think about it. It was a horrible experience. It was so embarrassing. But I remember they told me like, buddy, like you have too much to offer. We're not going to just let you drop out. Cause that was kind of my plan. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh man, I'm making good money pushing cars to Thunderbird. I can just do this for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember taking my ASVAB when I was enlisting and getting like a pretty good score and being shocked. And I mean, genuinely, and I've seen this too as I've worked with some of these people through the recruiting process. You get a kid that scores like an 80 on their ASVAB. And like, oh my gosh, because they were horrible students. Like they barely graduated. And it was such a source of stress that they genuinely thought that they were stupid. And that's kind of how I felt too. And so it really was eye opening because I had a lot of self limiting obstacles that I had put up because I assumed that I was too dumb to do this. I assumed I was not hard enough worker and I didn't have enough dedication.
Mhm.
And I didn't have. I mean, I had people around me who were telling me the opposite, but I didn't believe that.
Yeah. I think a lot of people do that. I feel
I
like
think
that
so too.
self-limit, those thoughts,
Hmm.
right? Whether we call it, I don't know. I just feel like a lot of us do that where we limit ourselves in our brains. You mentioned that now do you still challenge yourself? Like now going forward, do you like look for opportunities to challenge yourself? What are some of the things you're doing outside of that? We talked a little bit about some of them. You're in a band
I'm
now.
in a band. That's not hard. That's not hard. That's that's really easy.
Mhm.
If nothing else, like I've always enjoyed being in front of people. I've always enjoyed performing.
Mhm.
And I guess I've always had a knack for music. Um, that's easy. I just feel genuinely blessed that I have an opportunity to perform. Um, I think I live a fairly simple life. And the lines between professionalism and like personal, they really get blurred. But I just think that's just an inherent attribute of being in the military. The military takes a lot from your personal life, but it also gives a lot. And so professionally, throughout the years, I have just, if there's an opportunity presented to me, I almost always take it. Like it is a personal philosophy of mine. And so when I was part of the air traffic control mission, anytime that there was an opportunity to travel, to actually do our job or a chance to deploy, like I would always take that. Um, and it just really expands your worldview. It forces you to think about the world. It contextualizes the world on a much broader scale than if you just stayed in Klamath Falls, and just kind of did your thing. And so you realize how much there is available. And without getting too existential, you realize there's a lot of things that you should just do because if you don't, like there's a chance you just run out of time. Um, and so professionally, that really forces me to just kind of pour myself into what I do, like genuinely care, which is easy to do in recruiting. Because if you care about people, this is a people job. And so I really pour myself into these individuals to set them up better than I was. But also the Air National Guard and the Air Force, it's very small. And so you take these opportunities, you never know who's going to kind of reach out and be like, hey, bud, do you remember me? I'm in charge of this program now. Or um, the enterprise is changing, and we think you're the guy that will kind of help like herald it into a new era. And so there's so much that I try and keep my head on a swivel, opportunities to look for.
I we're nearing the end of our time, but I
Yeah, I'm
love
so sorry.
no, it's perfect.
Um,
You've given some really good feedback. And that last thing that you said, I raised my kids that if you train yourself to see opportunity, then more opportunity comes to you. I think
mhm,
it's kind of, we hear that thing. If you think about a yellow car, you're going to see yellow cars, right? If you
absolutely.
think about opportunity and you see the opportunity, you're going to see more opportunity. And I think there's a mindset shift there for that.
I do too.
So,
I really do
and
too.
you're living that, it
Yeah.
sounds like.
And I can see it. I talked to you about your own son, listening to his stories after he's come back from some of the things that he's done. And that is the type of person, it's just so good to see,
Mhm.
because he genuinely loves it for everything that it was.
Yeah.
And you can tell that he wants to learn and he wants to do more, and he is. Um, so it's great. Like you can see that
Yeah.
in his own development.
And I think do people come back to you after you've recruited them and be like, thank you?
Mhm.
Right. That's got to be
Yeah,
rewarding.
it's extremely rewarding. Or you see these people and they're winning awards, or you even just see them on social media and they're out doing these crazy things like stuff that, like, man, I wish I could do that. Um, and yeah, when they come back, they're like, dude, this is so cool. This is so cool.
Mhm.
Because I did that to my own recruiter. Like,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
I love that. Well, thank you for your time today. I
Absolutely.
appreciate it. I have a couple questions that I ask everybody.
Hmm.
Um, I did change them up a little bit for this veterans series that we're doing in honor of America's 250th. So, thinking about America turning 250,
Okay.
250, what is something you hope we remember as a country?
I think just like anything else, my last deployment was in 2018, and we provided all of the air traffic control for our area of responsibility, um, basically from like the border of Iraq into Syria. And they were just bad guys doing bad things. And I remember you train and you train and you train and you train, and then when you're actually out doing your job, some of the things that we saw, like some of the atrocities that some of these people could afflict on like another human, um, it made it made me realize like how important what we do is. Like it gave it a weight, a tangible weight, because there's nothing more important than like the reverence that life has, on our in this on our planet. Um, and so I think taking a step back and understanding that everybody has every part of history has a black mark. But the things that we do, especially the things that we do at Kingsley Field, like genuinely helps people. I've seen it firsthand. It genuinely has helped people. It's helped people in our state. It's helped people in Vietnam and Bangladesh. I saw it help people in Iraq. Um, so just remembering that it's more than politics. Like a lot of stuff that we do, it really does boil down to like this is somebody's life. Um, I don't know. That was a very unfocused answer.
No, I think that's great though. I think the focus on life
Mhm.
and helping is really, I think that's a good message.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been a really, really good life. It's been a really good career. I've seen so much and I've done so much that I never thought that I would. Um, and I wish I would have realized the opportunities that were presented to me when I was younger. Because even at 32, these doors start closing. Um, So I genuinely feel blessed that I'm able to work with these people who are much younger, who kind of have like infinite opportunities, and get to push them towards a path where they could genuinely like make a difference outside of their own lives, outside of Klamath Falls, and really impact the world potentially on a much larger scale.
Yeah, that's awesome. What does patriotism mean to you?
When I joined, I was not a very traditional person. I was not a very patriotic person, and it was this culmination of experiences throughout my life. Um, but ultimately, like seeing the birth of my children, um, and understanding the weight that it carries to see myself in uniform. Um, it made me appreciate the sacrifices, whether somebody lived or died, right? But somebody who served in the military, you see the sacrifices that they've made in the easiest, most insignificant job, all the way to somebody who flies a plane, or some general who's delegating policy on behalf of their intuition and their knowledge. Um, it's so important, and it makes me appreciate it so much. I got to fly in an F-15 on my birthday. This would have been last year. And so I had won an award for being the top recruiter in the state of Oregon. And when you get an award like that, especially one that kind of leaves like the state, you start competing against other regions and other states in America. Um, Kind of gives you a unique opportunity to tell somebody exactly what you want. So they're like, hey, you won this. What do you want? All I want to do is fly in an F-15. And it was right during the time where the 15s were being divested at Kingsley Field. And so there were only a few flights left. And so the F-35s only have one seat. So like you're not going to fly in one unless you're a pilot. And so it was Colonel Cauldron of Shadow Fox. Uh, it was his Finney flight in the F-15s. He'd been flying F-15s for almost as long as I'd been in the military. And so I remember you get in your G suit, you go in, they size you up, you have to get prepared, you go and do all of this training, in case there was an emergency, you know how to egress from the jet. You go through a medical screening process to make sure that you're healthy enough to actually fly in a jet, because it's violent.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and I remember Colonel Cauldron pulling me aside and being like, "Hey, Hawthorne, a lot of times if we're doing a flight, somebody starts passing out, somebody starts getting sick, like we'll usually throttle back." And I remember he tells me, he goes, "Buddy, this is the last time I'm going to fly an F-15. And so I'm going to fly it like I stole it." He said, "I'm super sorry. If you have a bad time, it just is what it is, man." And I remember my kids were there, my wife was there. And you get suited up, you do pre-flight checks, you hook it to the comm system, you're hooking into your respiration system, and they closed the canopy. And I remember seeing my boys, and they're like waving at me, and waving at them. And we taxied the end of the runway. It was a beautiful day. There was no clouds. This was in November, so it wasn't cold, but it wasn't warm. It was perfect. And we started the end of the runway, and Colonel Cauldron Fox is counting down, 100 knots, 200 knots, 300 knots, 400 knots. And we get to the end of the runway, and it was an unrestricted vertical climb straight up into the sky. Um, and Colonel Cauldron's like, "Hawthorne, look behind you, man." And I remember you peek behind you, and you're just watching the earth disappear. Um, Most of the time when you go into a a flight, you have a mission set, right? It's a training base, and so it's usually part of a curriculum. But we didn't have any student pilots, and so Colonel Cauldron, and another pilot, Ripple. It was Ripple's 2000th flight hour. Um, they literally went up there with no other purpose other than to just see who was the better pilot. Um, and so we dogfight. It was amazing. I mean, it was one of the most unexplainable experiences I've ever encountered. Just the forces on your body, and then seeing, man, yeah, it was amazing. And when pilots have a Finney flight, it's a huge deal. I mean, it's a huge deal. So everybody comes onto the flight line, like all the enlisted, all of the officers, the pilot's family. They all come out and they spray the pilot with water. And I remember getting done and just being like, for the first time in 13 years, really being like, I'm so proud of what I do. I'm so lucky to be a part of this. Unfortunately, I'm a little too old to be a pilot. And I'm like, man, I feel like I could have done that too. Like, what a life to live. But seeing my children when I got back, like one of my sons, Trey, he still talks about it. He has posters of jets on his wall. Like, I think it was a real formative experience for him to see me get to do something like that. They do tell people I fly jets, which I have to run it back a lot and be like, I'm not a pilot. I just flew in a jet. But that really like solidified in the weirdest way, like my pride of serving, and like my love for America. I mean, it seems so cheesy, but it really just it brought it all together, like full circle for me.
Yeah.
Extremely proud of what we do at Kingsley Field. I'm proud of the bosses that we have and the people who have poured themselves into me, and now having the opportunity to do the same thing for others. Like, it's a blessing. It's a blessing that I have this opportunity.
That's awesome. That's going to be my last question, because I don't know how I could follow that up. Thank you for your service.
Absolutely.
Thank you for what you do.